Kyora Sazanami, I don't think, is talked about enough when looking at impactful characters in the story of Kagurabachi. I might be wrong, but from what I've seen, antagonists like Hirohiko, Sojo, and Yura have taken up most of the conversations in regards to villains of this story. And yeah, one of the last videos I dropped was on Sojo, so maybe I can't say much, but that's why we're here. I do think being overshadowed by his own son Hakuri and the shift in focus towards the Shinichi at the end of the Rakuzaichi arc might have played a part in why I think he's a bit underrated. I'm a Sojo glazer, not gonna lie, so by no means did I think he was an easy act to follow. Yet, Kyora doesn't disappoint, at all. In fact, as I kept reading, I was actually very pleasantly surprised when I began to notice the route being taken with the writing during the Rakuzaichi arc, and what we the readers could learn about Chihiro in his clash against the Sazanami family. This arc is also when we begin to see what else the story might really be trying to say about the enchanted blades. Naturally, Kyora feels like perfect opposition for Chihiro, taking in consideration the backstory of both and their motivations in present day. Contrary to Sojo, the more time we spend getting to know the Sazanami head, the more we learn about him and his past, his relationship with his children, and what his priorities are. It's the Shinichi, or as it's officially named, Magatsumi, and its presence at the Rakuzaichi what leads Chihiro to the next big bad. And yeah, because this story revolves around the enchanted blades, it only makes sense that the second arc villain would be yet another character attempting to use them for their own benefit. However, what drives Kyora and ultimately his end goal are entirely different from other villains in Kagurabachi. This is what makes him dangerous and unpredictable. The Sazanami are a powerful clan, notorious for running the Rakuzaichi auction on the black market for generations. Kyora became the 11th head when his father Sora passed away, and as a father himself, he knew exactly what fulfilling his duty as head would require. When introduced at the beginning of the second arc, he puts on a master class on how to exercise leverage when handling a complicated situation, and along a calm but very assertive demeanor, Kyora shows why he's no pushover. After knowing the Shinichi would be at the Rakuzaichi after taking down Sojo, Chihiro made the bold move of infiltrating the Sazanami estate to threaten Kyora. And when things don't play out in his favor, him and Shiba are ambushed by the Toe, the clan's special defense unit and personal bodyguards of Kyora. They're also his children. Soya, Enji, Tamaki, and Tenri are the 4 members of this elite squad. Even as children of the Sazanami head, they're merely devices for his mission, tasked with protecting the Rakuzaichi at all costs. Hell, it's literally their family motto: protect the Rakuzaichi above all else. Those born into the family were trained in sorcery from a young age to carry out their life purpose. The Sazanami clan was powerful enough that even the Kamunabi knew that they wouldn't emerge unscathed if they went to war. The Toe consists of the top 4 fighters of the clan's 50 sorcerers. However, none of this is what makes the Sazanami special. At the very peak of the clan lies their true strength and what makes them so powerful, a type of sorcery passed down for generations since the first patriarch of the family, the storehouse. A subspace the user can manipulate entirely, used to store the clan's most valuable goods as well as items for the Rakuzaichi. A subspace that belonged to Kyora since he became head. This is precisely how he's able to check Chihiro and put him on the defensive after they meet. Of course, thanks to Hakuri's intel, Chihiro was ready, setting the precedent for how his rivalry with Kyora very much feels like a chess match moving forward. Chihiro is forced to give up N10 to save Hakuri after dueling against Tenri, Tamaki, and Enji, who Kyora supported with weapons using his storehouse, as an example of yet another way it can be used. Even though Chihiro had a plan, the fact that Kyora was able to make him part with the one secret enchanted blade his father left for him doesn't just speak to Chihiro's sense of morality, giving it up to save someone he just met, but also Kyora's ability to take advantage of any situation. The Sazanami head demonstrates that, without having to lift a finger, he's a force to be reckoned with. How so, exactly? Well, Hakuri is a talentless failure in the eyes of Kyora, and who he uses as leverage to turn the tables by holding him hostage in exchange for N10. It's here when the idea of contrasting family values between what we've seen from the Rokuhira and the Sazanami becomes the thematic focus of the arc. For Chihiro, everything went according to plan, since worst case scenario, he hoped to make his way back to N10 using remote activation. For Kyora, the son he considered worthless was finally useful for something. Chihiro never questioned the value of Hakuri. After all, Hakuri had already put his life on the line for him once a few chapters back, when he told Chihiro that N10 suited him. And there are more layers to this. Chihiro not only trusted his own growth and ability to pull off remote activation as much as he believed in Hakuri, but he would just never trade a life to keep an enchanted blade. Even if it keeps him closer to his goal of retrieving them, it goes against the very reason he's taking them back in the first place. On a much more personal level, looking at this from the perspective on what family is or isn't supposed to be, Hakuri grew up with a prestigious father and a house full of siblings, yet without being loved, while Chihiro growing up had no more than a loving father, who was then taken from him in the worst way possible. What Hakuri and Chihiro never had, or at one point lost, they found in each other. Fast forward to the Rakuzaichi auction, everything is in place for Chihiro to set his plan in motion. But the path back to Enten is by no means an easy one. With Kyora on alert, he rearranged the defenses for this year's auction. Instead of having the TOW guard the stage, he does that himself and has them guard the emergency secret door, the one access point to the storehouse where Chihiro and the gang plan to strike, and the TOW knows something is up. Hakuri, however, serves as the wild card. They not only kept Chihiro in the game after losing Enten, but raises absolute hell during the Rakuzaichi. Being Soya's weakness, despite his big brother's intellect, Hakuri's presence instantly compromises the TOW, and Shiba takes the offensive. Under unforeseen circumstances, Chihiro comes face to face with the man responsible for his father's death, and Hakuri is forced to deal with his big brother all by himself. Yura, the leader of the Hishaku, was the one working with Kyora to auction the Shinichi, the same guy who used Sojo's name to do so, and now he gets in Chihiro's way to stop him from interfering with the Rakuzaichi. Also, he can eventually wield the Shinichi himself. He doesn't kill him immediately because he's interested in seeing what Chihiro has made of himself since he killed his father. It's all too much for Chihiro, but similar to his first encounter with Sojo, he's forced to lock in, this time relying solely on the broken Cloud Gouger, and he does so more than effectively, using Mei Shred for the first time. Cloud Gouger, in solidarity with Chihiro, on the brink of death, strained to serve its master, unleashing lightning beyond its limits. The way Hokazono writes this moment and describes Cloud Gouger's behavior really brings it to life. Not even Sojo had the loyalty of the Enchanted Blade, and it goes to show that Yura might just be wrong about anybody being able to enslave them. Chihiro taps into a whole nother level of speed and power, and being in complete sync with Cloud Gouger allowed him to clearly feel its impending demise. He's able to keep a level head though, and ultimately makes the wise choice, backing up Hakuri, continuing their plan instead of going at Yura, who vanishes before Hiyuki can have a crack at him. The Rakuzaichi went on, but was on the brink of being interrupted as Shiba defeated the TOW and then uses Tenri's eye as an ashtray to get the emergency door open. The unknown force that is Shiba had off-screened the remaining 3 members of the TOW. Aware of his power and seeing what he's about to do to his little brother, Enji considers giving up access to the door. But Tenri wasn't going out like that. You see, like I brought up earlier, the TOW and the Sazanami in general are just built different. But on top of that, Tenri has been considered special for as long as he can remember. Younger than Hakuri by a year, by 16 he earned the title of the youngest TOW in history. For that same reason, he's always had an extra chip on his shoulder. In his eyes, Hakuri was the worthless one who couldn't live up to the Sazanami name, the one who disgraced their father, while Tenri was determined to make his father proud. The Rakuzaichi would not be interfered with as long as he had a say. Using his storehouse, Kyora transported an unstabilized weapon of Datenseki for Tenri to use, Genichi Sojo's legacy. The genius seemingly on path to surpass Kunishige Rokuhira, but flew too close to the sun. This stone is ultimately what his work amounted to. Weapons that enhance the body with power that could rival the enchanted blades, with the drawback of it being temporary and the body being unable to withstand the flow of spirit energy after a while. Defend to the death are Kyora's last word to his young son. Upon holding on to the stone, Tenri's spirit energy manifests in a jellyfish form. At the same time, Hakuri had his own breakthrough against Soya, finally learning to use Iso and determined to take down his oldest brother himself so Chihiro could get to the door. And Chihiro gets there just in the nick of time, hitting Shiba with the same "how's my timing" line he had hit him with earlier in the arc. Chihiro becomes aware of the situation and tries to speak sense into Tenri, and it's in this moment when the theme of father-son bonds and how that bond can shape the latter really takes the center stage. Hakuri had told Chihiro that he too was once like his younger brother, only seeking his father's approval, and to a degree, Chihiro can relate to that, respect it. It's exactly why instead of withdrawing and regrouping like Shiba suggests, he decides to face Tenri head-on and give him an honorable death. Meanwhile, Hakuri gets destroyed by Soya as he recalled the tragedy of the imprisoned girl he tried to befriend, what made him run away in the first place, and he begins to manifest, or rather transport, the lost tools Soya would use to bully him. Soya knows exactly what this means. the impossible. Hakuri is the first Sazanami since the first patriarch to not only both wield the storehouse and use Iso, but his storehouse is the product of that sorcery re-emerging in the bloodline, not being passed down. In other words, Hakuri's potential is on par with that of the first clan head. The imprisoned girl Hakuri had tried to befriend before he ran away was a hostage and merchandise for the Rakuzaichi he was tasked to look after. She would witness Hakuri's mental and physical state every time he would come back from his family's bullying, and made him believe that they could run away together. At his lowest point, he gave in, only to realize that she was always looking for a way out, not of a cage, but her reality. She had told him once that he was the one imprisoned in a cage. Those words rang deep for Hakuri because, looking back, he realized that his time with her was a relief to his miserable existence. He feels that if he would have showed her that life outside of a cage was different, then maybe he could have saved her. It all clicked for him. He finally understood his power like Shiba predicted. The reason he was unable to use Iso all this time was because he was unconsciously using all his spirit energy to maintain the storehouse, but that was no longer the case. Hakuri was able to focus and unleash his spirit energy into an Iso that finally brings down Soya. After some back and forth, Tenri's body went out before Chihiro could give him a chance to surrender. With the toe out of the way, Chihiro and Hakuri head to the emergency door, only to find it destroyed. This was Kyora's way of having Chihiro reveal his hand. The first thing Chihiro thinks is of how Tenri sacrificed his life to protect a door that was already gone. Yet for Kyora, Tenri's death was only a small price to pay. Once again, the Sazanami head demonstrates his ability to stay one step ahead by any means necessary, just like he ended up taking N10 when he was the one having his home invaded early in the arc. In his eyes, they're always the hunters. So Hakuri decided to step up and face his father in the middle of the Rakuzaichi. For the first time, the reader is witness to how Kyora responds to his own mistake. He's aware that it's his fault for not recognizing Hakuri, but ultimately, he's still the enemy. So Kyora doesn't waver. Hakuri, though, went with a plan. He figured out how to transport items he imbued with his spirit energy into Kyora's storehouse, because he himself, like his siblings, was registered into it at birth. This is exactly how he's able to get Chihiro into the storehouse to keep the plan going. Not only is it an example of great writing with the reveal of the emergency door and the implications on Tenri's sacrifice, but Chihiro's mindset and his respect for Hakuri, allowing him to grow and allowing himself to learn and be inspired by that growth, is what makes this whole arc stand out. Chihiro told Hakuri himself that when he trusted him to handle Soya, all he knew was that if he were to get in the way of his determination, then they wouldn't be equal allies. And after entering Kyora's storehouse and using what was left of Cloud Gouger to retrieve N10, all Chihiro could think of was that they weren't equal. It was Hakuri who defeated Soya. Despite being family, he was the one willing to do what had to be done. Meanwhile, Chihiro was holding back. That, however, changes as soon as he takes back N10, and he gets the green light from Hakuri to slay his father. Chihiro and Kyora engage in their highly anticipated battle, as the Sazanami head is clear about putting it all on the line for the enchanted blades and to protect the Rakuzaichi, determined to fight to the death. In doing so, his desire to stop at nothing to protect the auction backfires, and Chihiro and Hakuri work together to teleport grenades Kyora originally spawned in the storehouse against Chihiro to the Rakuzaichi, using Kyora's own offensive to destroy the very thing he aimed to preserve, and this results in one of the coldest panels in the whole series. As he faced Kyora head-on, similar to how he did with the grenades, Chihiro managed to use his spirit energy to create contact with the hostages, so Hakuri could safely transport them out. Kyora wasn't having it though. With the Rakuzaichi about to be no more, he decided to auction the Shinichi immediately. He's clearly bitter about the fact that failing as Hakuri's father has now come back to bite him, but he's always prioritized his role as the head of the Sazanami and overseer of the Rakuzaichi over anything else. And now is no different, despite the circumstances changing. He even tells Chihiro that whatever criteria he uses to measure him as a quote-unquote father, he's wrong to do so. As the Shinichi takes the stage, the fight to the death officially begins. Hakuri taps out after pushing himself too far, or so we're led to believe since he fakes out his father with a projection and transports Chihiro one last time to land the fatal blow. Once again, the way this encounter is executed is a perfect embodiment of Chihiro and Kyora's dynamic of who can accurately predict the other's next move and how the other responds to try to turn the tide. Kyora does this over and over again, and then one last time, taking N10, destroying the emergency door, and lastly wielding a sheathed Shinichi, bypassing its eternal contract. This time though, in a desperate gamble to stay alive, Kyora had no other choice, and at the same time absolutely no idea what he's meddling with. The Shin'uchi's considered the most dangerous enchanted blade for a reason. Kunishige, the creator himself, was wary of its power. Even a fraction of it is enough for the imprisoned Master Swordsman, the original wielder of the Shin'uchi, to try to hijack Kyora's body using the enchanted blade. But Kyora doesn't give in. He will proceed with the Rakuzaichi. It is here, during the climax of this arc, when Kyora truly cements himself as a worthy antagonist, successfully keeping at bay the Master Swordsman's influence in his head while imposing his own will of keeping the auction going, even almost defeating Chihiro if it isn't for Hiyuki. And I'll just say, after Hakuri, she's probably low-key the MVP of this arc, the Ray Allen of 2013 if you will, but I digress. Hiyuki, Kyora, and Chihiro all have their own motivations for wanting the enchanted blades, but unfortunately for the Sazanami head, even with limited use of the Shin'uchi, even after overcoming its influence with his devotion to the Rakuzaichi, he is no match for the combination of Enten, Flamebone, and Hakuri storehouse. He gave it all and then some to protect the Rakuzaichi, yet everything is destroyed by the Shin'uchi. The hostages are saved, and Kyora comes to terms with his failure. Even his wife's dying words didn't resonate with him like his failure to recognize Hakuri did. Kyora doesn't regret not walking away from the Rakuzaichi and the traditions of the Sazanami. He regrets not considering the slim chance that Hakuri could be special only because he didn't align with his ideals. After everything, Kyora's the one that couldn't fulfill his role. And so during the last Rakuzaichi, like he said he would back in the flashback of chapter 39, Hakuri surpasses his father, in ways neither of them could have imagined. Kyora's purpose as the Sazanami head is what allowed him to not give in to the Shin'uchi's influence, but it's also what set him down a cursed path in the first place. In the eyes of the Hishaku, he was nothing more than a stepping stone. Yura used Kyora as a guinea pig to see the extent of the Shin'uchi's power when attempting to bypass its eternal contract. So from his perspective, Kyora did precisely what was expected from him. Another example of how his own ambition led him to his demise. Kyora was the father who would sacrifice his own children to preserve what he valued most, going up against the orphan who fights to protect his deceased father's legacy, what he values most. It's easy to see why Chihiro couldn't fathom Kyora's line of thinking, not just because it's wrong and whatnot, but because his father, the widely revered Kunishige, never valued his creations, his legacy, over his own son. Where Chihiro and Kyora aren't too different though is in their level of willpower. Kyora wouldn't give up the Rakuzaichi just like Chihiro won't give up the enchanted blades. In fact, throw Hakuri in there as well, as he wasn't willing to give up on saving the hostages either, and the persistence of the three of them is emphasized in the arc finale. Ultimately, both Hakuri and Chihiro carry the burden of their father's sins. One way or another, it's what brought them together, and it's all handled in such a captivating and remarkable manner. The Rakuzaichi arc really goes into the core of Chihiro's character and his dynamics with those who oppose his worldview through his interactions with Hiyuki, Yura, and the Sazanami, all while moving forward the plot of the dark truth behind the Shin'uchi and the enchanted blades. Hokazono proves that the first arc of Kagurabachi was no fluke. This time around he crafted another exceptional antagonist that rivals and in some ways even surpasses the high bar set with Sojo. Kyora Sazanami and the Rakuzaichi arc are a perfect example of how to write a second arc that goes bigger and badder in every way, while building on everything that made the previous introductory arc great. And that's why I think it's absolute cinema. I appreciate you reaching the end of the video. What's your favorite arc so far? Which antagonists are you a fan of and why? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for sticking around and check out the channel for more content. Much love and take care. Peace.